The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It fell in heavy, relentless sheets over the dusty plains, turning the dirt into a mess of mud and memory. The old saloon at the edge of Dry Creek barely stood against the storm, its roof leaking, its windows fogged, and its silence thicker than the wind outside. Inside, a man sat alone near the fire, a broad-shouldered cowboy with a face carved by time and grief. His name was Cole Rayner, known across counties not for his words, but for the heavy silence that followed him wherever he went. He had buried too many things: his past, his pride, and his heart. The fire's crackle was his only company when he heard the door creak open. At first, he thought it was the wind. But then came a sound, a small, shivering voice, trembling as if made of glass. "Please, please, don't beat me. I'm already hurt." Cole turned slowly, his hand instinctively brushing the gun at his side. But when his eyes met hers, everything in him froze. She couldn't have been more than 16, barely more than a child, her dress torn, her skin bruised, her hair matted with rain and dirt. She stood in the doorway, clutching herself, soaked to the bone, eyes wide with the kind of fear that could hollow a person out. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain thundered against the roof, lightning flickering across her fragile frame. Cole stood, his boots heavy against the wooden floor. "Ain't no one gonna hurt you here," he said, his voice low and rough like gravel. She flinched anyway, stepping back until the door hit her spine. He stopped. He had seen wounded animals before, how they'd snarl and tremble when kindness came too close. She was no different. Slowly, he took off his hat, setting it on the table beside him. Then he unbuttoned his coat and walked toward her, not fast, but steady, like a man approaching a scared horse. "What's your name?" he asked. Her lips quivered. "Lila," she whispered, barely audible above the storm. He nodded once. "Lila, you're safe now." But she didn't believe him, not yet. When he stepped closer, she flinched again, her breath quick and shallow. Her eyes darted to the fireplace, to the door, to anything that meant escape. Cole saw the bruise on her cheek, purple and raw. He saw the blood drying near her collarbone, the cut on her arm that looked too fresh to ignore. He pointed toward the fire. "You'll catch your death if you stay wet like that." Still trembling, she moved forward, slow as a ghost, and knelt by the fire. Steam rose from her dress as the heat hit her. Cole fetched a blanket from the back room and laid it across her shoulders. When she didn't take it, he draped it over her himself. She didn't meet his eyes. He went back to his chair and poured her a cup of coffee, sliding it across the table. She stared at it like it might bite. "It's just coffee," he said, taking a sip from his own mug to show her. Minutes passed before she reached for it, both hands shaking. The warmth hit her lips, and for the first time since she'd walked in, her eyes softened a little. Cole didn't ask questions. He'd learned long ago that people talked when they were ready. But when he saw her wince, he couldn't help it. "Who hurt you?" Her shoulders stiffened, the coffee trembling in her grip. "My uncle," she whispered. "He said I was a burden, said I should earn my keep. When I tried to run, her voice broke. She swallowed hard, tears glinting in the firelight. "He said no one would take a useless girl like me. That I'd die out there alone." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked away, eyes burning not from the smoke, but from the storm inside him. He'd seen men like that before, men who thought power was something earned by cruelty. "You're not useless," he said finally. Lila looked up, startled. "Then why'd everyone leave me?" "Because people break things they don't understand," he said quietly. "And some things are too good for the hands that hold them." For a while, they said nothing. The fire popped and hissed as rain drummed against the roof. She pulled the blanket tighter, eyes drooping from exhaustion. "You can sleep here tonight," Cole said. "There's a bed in the back. Tomorrow, we'll figure what comes next." Her gaze flicked to him, wary. "You're not gonna hurt me." He looked at her, steady and sure. "No, ma'am. I don't raise my hands to the broken." Something inside her cracked then, not from fear, but from the weight of a kindness she didn't know how to accept. Tears slipped down her face, soundless and trembling. Cole turned away to give her privacy, but her quiet sobs filled the small room. He didn't touch her, didn't say another word. Just let her cry, like a man who knew the value of silence better than comfort. When dawn came, the rain had stopped. The plains shimmered under a pale gold sky. Lila woke wrapped in warmth for the first time in years. Cole was outside, chopping wood, his movements slow but powerful. He looked up when she stepped out, barefoot on the porch, the blanket still draped around her. "You sleep all right?" he asked. She nodded. "It's the first time I wasn't scared." He gave a small nod, like that meant something heavy to him. "You can stay as long as you need." Days passed, and she began to heal. She swept the floors, mended torn clothes, fed the horses. Every evening, she'd sit on the porch while Cole played his harmonica under the setting sun. She didn't talk much, and neither did he, but in the quiet between them, something unspoken began to grow. One night, as the sky turned violet and the crickets sang, she looked at him and said, "You saved me." Cole paused mid-note. "No," he said softly. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to rest." But she shook her head, tears welling again. "You don't understand. When you looked at me, I didn't feel dirty or weak. You saw me like I was someone worth saving." Cole's throat tightened. He turned his gaze toward the horizon. "Maybe 'cause I was once where you are." She blinked. "You," he nodded slowly, "wasn't always this way. Used to be a man who thought he could fix the world with his fists. Lost someone I loved 'cause of it. Since then, I keep my hands busy but never raised." The silence between them deepened, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of shared pain, understood without words. Weeks turned into months. The scars on Lila's skin faded, but the ones inside healed slower. Still, she laughed sometimes now, small, shy sounds that made Cole's heart stir in ways he hadn't felt in years. Then, one evening, a wagon rolled into town. A sheriff stepped down, holding a letter with Lila's name. Her uncle had been arrested. She was free. She stood there, letter trembling in her hands, and looked up at Cole. "I don't know where to go now," she said softly. He looked at her, his eyes deep with something he didn't know how to name. "You got a home here, if you want it." And for the first time since she had walked into his life, she smiled, a real one, small and trembling, but filled with light. That night, when the fire burned low, she whispered, "Thank you, Cole." He tipped his hat, the faintest of smiles tugging at his lips. "Ain't no need for thanks, darlin'. Sometimes, two broken souls just find each other in the storm." And in that little cabin on the edge of Dry Creek, the silent cowboy and the girl who once cried for mercy sat beneath the whisper of rain, no longer haunted, but whole. The fire had long burned down to glowing embers, throwing a faint amber light over the small cabin. The storm had softened into a distant hum, and the world outside seemed to hold its breath. Cole sat in his chair, elbows resting on his knees, his hat tipped forward just enough to shadow his eyes. Across from him, Lila sat curled beneath the blanket, her head resting on the edge of the hearth. Her face was calm, her lips parted slightly in sleep, a trace of peace softening the worry that had once carved itself into her features. He watched her for a long while, the quiet of the room wrapping around him like something sacred. The sound of her breathing was light, steady, fragile, the kind of sound a man didn't realize he missed until he'd been alone too long. He took a slow breath, the smell of rain and wood smoke mingling with the faint scent of her hair that carried across the room. Cole had spent years believing he'd already lived the best of his days, that whatever good there was left in him had died with the woman he'd once loved. But watching Lila sleep, small and safe for the first time, something unfamiliar stirred deep within him. Not desire, not yet, but a warmth that pulled at his chest. When dawn came, he rose quietly, careful not to wake her. He poured water into the basin, washed the night's weariness from his face, and stepped outside. The air was cool and sharp, heavy with the scent of wet earth. Across the plain, the sun was climbing, slow and gold, turning the soaked grass into a sea of light. Lila woke to the sound of a horse nickering outside and the faint clang of a pail. She blinked, pulling the blanket closer, for a moment forgetting where she was. But then she saw the cabin walls, the gentle smoke curling from the hearth, and remembered. A small, uncertain smile touched her lips. Cole came back in, his boots tracking a bit of mud across the floor. "Mornin'," he said. "Good morning," she replied softly, her voice still rough from sleep. He set down a tin cup in front of her. "Ain't much, but it's warm." She took it, wrapping her fingers around it. It wasn't the kind of coffee served in town, sweet and creamy, it was bitter and strong, but she didn't mind. It tasted of safety, of something real. After breakfast, she followed him outside. The air smelled of pine and wet grass. Cole was tending to his horses, his hands moving steady, practiced. Lila stood near the fence, watching the big chestnut stallion toss his head, steam rising from his breath. His name's Red, Cole said, noticing her gaze. Temper like a storm, but loyal once he knows you. She smiled faintly. He's beautiful. Cole gave a small nod. You can brush him, if you want. He won't bite unless you're mean to him. Her eyes widened, a flicker of excitement breaking through her timidity. She took the brush he handed her, hesitating only a second before stepping close to the animal. Red snorted, muscles rippling beneath his coat, but when she laid a gentle hand on his neck, he stilled. She brushed him slowly, careful and quiet, the way one might touch something holy. Cole leaned against the fence, arms folded, watching her. The morning light caught in her hair, turning the brown strands to copper. He'd forgotten what it looked like, joy. Even a small, fragile bit of it. Days turned into weeks. Lila began to find her rhythm. She learned to bake bread on the old stove, to hang laundry in the wind, to fetch water from the well. Sometimes Cole would come home from the fields to find her humming softly, barefoot in the dust, the sunset painting her in gold. And each time, something inside him eased, something he hadn't known was clenched tight all these years. They talked little, but what they said mattered. She'd ask him about the land, about the stars, about why he never went to town except for supplies. He'd answer simply, but always with a patience that surprised her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Lila asked, "Do you ever get lonely, out here all by yourself?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "Used to. Then I got used to it. After a while, the quiet feels safer than people." She looked down. "I understand that." He glanced at her, the dying sunlight soft against her face. "You don't have to be quiet anymore, Lila." She met his eyes, uncertain. "It's hard to forget fear." "I know," he said softly. "But it don't last forever, not if you let something better take its place." That night, she dreamed of laughter, hers, echoing through the fields. When she woke, she found herself wishing the dream could linger. As summer turned to fall, the ranch took on a rhythm of peace. The grass turned dry and golden, the sky a deeper shade of blue. Lila grew stronger, surer. She could ride now, Cole had taught her, slow and steady, his hand steadying the reins until she trusted herself. The first time she rode alone, he'd stood back, arms crossed, pride hidden behind his calm expression. "You did good," he told her when she dismounted, breathless and glowing. She smiled up at him, wind in her hair. "Only 'cause you were there." He looked away then, his chest tight. One cold evening, when the wind howled and the first snow dusted the windowsill, they sat together by the fire again. Lila stitched a torn sleeve, her fingers nimble in the glow. Cole sat nearby, carving wood, a small horse taking shape beneath his hands. The firelight painted his face in golden shadow. "What are you making?" she asked. He held it up, embarrassed almost. "For you. Figured you liked red." Her breath caught. "You made this for me." "Just a bit of whittling," he said, shrugging. She reached out, taking it carefully. "It's beautiful. No one's ever made me anything before." He didn't answer, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet, unspoken warmth that said more than words ever could. Winter deepened. Snow blanketed the land, the world hushed and white. They spent most days indoors, the fire their only light. The days were long but gentle. Lila began reading from an old Bible she found on a shelf, her voice soft in the quiet. Cole would listen, sometimes nodding, sometimes lost in thought. One night, the cold was fierce. The wind battered the windows, and the fire burned low. Lila sat close, rubbing her hands for warmth. Cole threw another log on, then turned to her. "You'll catch cold sittin' that far." "I'm fine," she murmured, though her teeth chattered slightly. He hesitated, then gestured toward the rug near the fire. "Come closer. Ain't no harm in staying warm." She hesitated only a second, then moved nearer, sitting beside him. The heat of the fire mixed with the warmth of his presence. She could hear the slow rhythm of his breathing, steady and calm. For a long while, neither spoke. Then, softly, Lila said, "Cole. Yeah, you ever think, maybe the things that hurt us happen so we can find the ones who make it stop hurting?" He looked at her then, really looked, at the girl who had once walked into his life trembling and afraid, now sitting beside him, her eyes full of quiet strength. "Maybe so," he said. "Maybe that's what it's all for." Her gaze held his, steady, searching. You've been my safe place, Cole. His voice was rough when he spoke. And you've been the reason this house feels alive again. They sat in silence, the fire dancing between them, a golden bridge of warmth and understanding. As the months passed, the small cabin became something more than shelter, it became home. Lila planted wildflowers by the porch in spring, their colors bright against the dust. Cole built her a swing from an old rope and a plank, hanging it beneath the oak. She'd sit there. In the evenings, her laughter mingling with the wind, and every time she smiled, he swore the land itself grew softer. But one day, news came from town, her uncle had been released. The sheriff warned Cole quietly, said the man was asking questions, heading west. Cole didn't tell her at first. He didn't want to see that fear again. But secrets weighed heavy on him. That night, as they sat on the porch under the stars, he finally said it. Her face went pale. He's coming. Maybe, Cole said. But he won't lay a hand on you. I'll see to that. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. He took a slow breath, his voice steady. You gave me back something I thought was gone, Lila. Don't you think I'd fight for that? She didn't answer, just leaned into him, her head against his shoulder. The moment held, soft and trembling. A few days later, a shadow appeared on the horizon, a man on horseback. Lila saw him first, her body going still. Cole stepped out, his rifle slung casually at his side. When the man dismounted, drunk and snarling, Cole stood his ground. She's mine, the man spat. She ran off, but she's blood. Cole's eyes were cold steel. She ain't property. Not yours, not anyone's. The man lunged, but Cole moved faster, no shot fired, just a hard strike to the jaw that sent the drunk sprawling. He stood over him, voice quiet and deadly. You ever come near her again, you'll answer to me. The man scrambled up, muttering curses, and stumbled back to his horse. He didn't look back. When Cole turned, Lila was there, tears streaking her cheeks. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his chest. He stood frozen for a second, then held her, his hands gentle in her hair. It's over, he murmured. You're safe now. Her voice broke. You always make me safe. He looked down at her, eyes shining. You make me want to be. From that day forward, something shifted between them, quiet but undeniable. They still spoke little, but their silences were full, their eyes told stories words couldn't. On the first day of summer, she came to him by the river, where he was fixing the fence. The sunlight danced off the water, and a breeze carried the smell of wildflowers. She stood there a moment before saying softly, Cole, do you ever think we're meant to find peace, after all the pain? He set down his tools, wiped his hands, and looked at her. I think peace finds us when we stop running from it. She smiled, that small, trembling smile that had first melted something deep inside him. Then I think it's found us. He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, not out of passion, but out of understanding. Two souls, scarred but surviving, standing beneath the endless western sky. And when she looked up at him, the sunlight in her eyes, he finally saw what he'd been missing all along, not just redemption, but home.